Tacoma. We are an online community with a physical presence in Tacoma, Washington. Whether you're joining us online or in our storefront on South 74th Street, I definitely welcome you. As I mentioned earlier, I was not ready to do this talk, so it's kind of appropriate that we're talking about willfulness and about willingness, because let me tell you, there's a lot of willingness going on right here. There's a lot of willingness going on over here. She wasn't on duty either. I was actually able to find two other people who would have been willing to take that place and create an experience for all of us that is meaningful and rich. This is an amazing community, and I am so glad to be in it with you. It's kind of interesting that in this room, the person who knows me best is our musician, our visiting musician, Christine S. You guys don't know my little foibles and picadillos and crazy things that I do when the doors are shut on my house. But I'm going to let you in on a few secrets today. I'm going to move this so that I don't blow on it every time I talk. How's that, Scott? Thank you. I do this thing at night when I go to bed. I have these things called cozy phones. They're a strip of polar fleece that have flat, soft speakers in them. So it comes across my eyes like an eye mask, and then I've got these speakers on my ears, and I plug it into my phone, and I listen to music, or I listen to hypnosis recordings. And my favorite one that I've been doing for several months now is unlimited motivation. And I absolutely love it. Because we're talking about will and motivation today, it felt appropriate to share with you just this one bedroom habit of mine that I have. I tease David that I sleep with two men. He's next to me and I'm snuggled up next to him, and Steve G. Jones with his silky voice is telling me I can reach all my goals. It's easy. People say how I always accomplish everything I set my mind on. I have a hard time sleeping, so waking up to hearing that is just brilliant. I absolutely adore it. And I don't know whether it's made a difference or not. I really have a very strong preference for my spiritual practices that I do, but hey, it can't hurt. I'm a very motivated person. I don't know that I always would have called myself that. I think my mother would have called me a very willful child. But I think perhaps with maturity, that can change to being very motivated. I have another guilty pleasure, and that is that I like to listen to the talent auditions while I'm working here at church. I have 3 monitors, and I'll put, Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, American Idol, whatever, what have you, X Factor, up on one of my screens. I love to watch these competitions. Part of what I enjoy are the interviews and how much this means to everybody who's trying out. It is unbelievable the focus, the determination, and the motivation that these people have. Now, all of that sounds very positive, and all of us are like, I could use more of that in my life. I wonder what I could get accomplished if I didn't say no. What if I said yes to everything? There are some really bad auditions. Just spoiler alert. There are some really, really bad auditions. And they come from people who are motivated, determined, focused. So there's something there in the balance. I remember a little girl, she was maybe 12. She came into her audition, British girl, and she had kind of a party dress on, very, very feminine, very youthful. And they interviewed her, and she said all the right things. And then she opened her mouth to sing. And it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And when they said no and escorted her out, her father grabbed her arm and marched her right back in. You can tell where she got that determination and motivation, can't you? And Simon Cowell, who's sort of the big baddie of the judges, told that father, "You are doing your daughter a disservice. She is wasting her time. She is never going to be a singer. If she has practiced this hard for this long, and this is where she is not ever going to be a singer." Whoa. Whoa. There are things that are really important to me in my life. And I hope I'm not kidding myself about them. I hope I'm not kidding myself about wanting to do ministry and be of service to this community. I hope I'm not kidding myself that I can do something meaningful within my company, in my, my side hustle at the insurance firm, and grow in that job. I really hope I'm not kidding myself. But what gives me hope that I have clarity and discernment is the spiritual practices that I engage in here with you and at home. That in and of itself is its own discipline. Engaging in spiritual practice. It's kind of fun to watch my grandsons. They're just starting to talk. Boy, when they want something, they just want it. And the one who's still somewhat pre-verbal, if he can't verbalize what he wants, he just points, stamps his feet, and cries. I mean, we want what we want. But you got to take that element of maturity into account. When I was a young girl, my mother used to tell people how difficult I was. Boy, when Raylene digs her heels in, there is no reasoning with her. What's different about that is you can reason with me now. I still dig my heels in. But I'll listen. I'll listen, and I'll learn. When I asked David what he was going to talk about, because, this series was very important to him. This is not out of a book. This is something that he developed for himself. And I said, what are you going to talk about? What was important to you? And he talked about willingness versus willfulness. And I think that that's an important distinction to make. If you ask me what the will of God is, David might give you a different answer. But if you ask me what the will of God is, I would say that the will of God are those things that I've come to understand as God qualities. God qualities. There are certain things that are true about God that must be true of us if there really is only one life. But there are also things that are true about us that are not necessarily true about God. Does God have fun? I don't know. But I do know that God is joy. That I'm sure of. I think fun is maybe a human expression of that joy, and in that way, God is experiencing fun. So if you ask me, what is the will of God for your life? I don't have to know anything about you. I will tell you right now, the will of God for your life is that you be abundant, joyful, loved, loving, poised, wise. The will of God is the same for each and every one of us in Raylene World. But how does that manifest itself in your world? And can you will yourself into it? Well, you don't have to will yourself into it. You allow. You allow for God to be that expression, for you to be that expression of God. And then you listen for what that looks like for you, because it's not the same for me as it is for Bill, or as it is for Jen, or as it is for Kathy. There's this place in the universe for each and every one of us to show up as the light of God. And it looks different from me to you and you to her. It just does. Otherwise, why all this individuality? There was an idea in the mind of God, is how I've heard it phrased. There was an idea in the mind of God that looked, sounded, walked, talked, and behaved exactly like Heather. Bam! The void was filled. A necessary outpicturing of the will of God as Heather. The necessary outpicturing of the will of God as Samuel. You're here for a purpose and reason. There's something that only you can do. And it might not be winning on X Factor. I think we have a tendency to say, this This pop star makes me feel so good. I just want to get up and dance, and I want to sing along. I want to do that. I want the crowd to clap for me. It feels so good to fantasize about being a pop star. And is that really what you are called to do? I know I was drawn to ministry because I received so much from very talented, giving, wise ministers. I went through practitioner studies the whole time imagining that I was going to go on to ministerial school, which I never did. I kind of got to the end of that road and matured enough to realize I was doing what I wanted to do. I really didn't feel called to lead a church or do marriages or anything like that. I felt called to pray with people. I felt called to be of support in the back office, to create documents, to learn about church administration, and to support someone with true vision. That doesn't stop me from having my own ideas. Ask David how many times I've told him I think he's wrong. It's a very long list. I'm so glad that he actually listens when I talk. I've learned a lot about ministry, and I'm very honored that this community has asked me to step into a role of leadership while you're moving into your next best thing beginning in 2020. That's very exciting for me. I don't know if I could say yes to doing that for a longer period of time. What it looks like to me from where I'm standing is completely fulfilling who I know I am through my spiritual practices, through my contemplation, through my visioning, who I am and what I'm called to be in the world, is to be of encouragement and support. And being asked to do that while this community is in transition is totally in alignment with why I'm here in ministry. I love it when someone comes to me for a practitioner session, for a prayer counseling session, and says, I'm stuck. I have zero clarity. I don't know what I'm doing. All of this feels pointless. I love that. I love that because I know it's not true. I know it's not true, and I love walking someone through that and changing their mind in such a way that they walk out knowing exactly what's in front of them, knowing exactly what's calling them forward. Willfulness will get you an X Factor audition. Willingness will allow you to show up in the world truly, authentically. Spiritual practice is an interesting thing. When I was going through ecclesiastical studies, one of the things they talked about was a daily dedicated spiritual practice, and that just drove me absolutely nuts. I did not like it. I knew a lot of people who had a little altar in the corner, and they had candles and chimes and kneeling cushions, and I'd walk into their house. I'd just be a little bit jealous, just a little envious of their devotion, of their discipline, of their very beautiful spiritual practice. That's just never been me. And I fought it for a long time. I tried, and you know what it did? It made me feel less than. Oh my gosh, I didn't meditate this morning. Oh boy, I couldn't focus on the guided meditation or find my groove with a regular prayer practice. And while doing the discipline has certainly helped me to get into a place where I can do that, what I've also come to realize is that my spiritual practice is moment to moment. And it's pretty self-centered. It's pretty self-centered. Who am I? What am I called to be? Did I grow this year? When I feel uncomfortable because of a change or because of a conflict with someone, I really do just step back in the moment and think about it. Who am I? Were my actions as loving as they could have been? Why weren't they as loving as I could have been? What must I believe that I experienced fear in that moment rather than joy, rather than love, rather than compassion, rather than something that wasn't fear? It's a rich spiritual practice. I'm here to tell you, it's not beautiful. It doesn't involve chimes. It doesn't involve silk kneeling cushions. It doesn't involve woo-woo music. It kicks my butt. And that's okay, because that's what's right for me. I have a very solid annual spiritual practice. And that's of setting an intention. And something that I think David would comment on, he has commented on, is how much I work my intention every year. You want to see willfulness and willingness in action, man, set a big, fat, hairy intention for yourself and watch what happens. Because if you haven't heard me talk about how the universe works, how does all this namby-pamby, happy, sappy, hairy, hippie stuff actually look like when you're doing it? When you set an intention for a high good, something that you know you can't do on your own, something that the universe is going to have to give you an assist to really happen, every barrier to that good will come up for healing. Every last one. Every last one. When I set an intention for divine right partnership, before I met David, I met a lot of jerks. I will never forget the first time I said no to a relationship. I was so desperate for love and partnership that any guy who said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Oh, I was there. I was there. It had nothing to do with anything other than he was willing to give it a shot. Never occurred to me to be selective, to say, okay, that's actually not what I want. And so, when I had been doing that work for a while, so I started in January, was around October, I don't know, David has my journal page from that particular journal entry I'm going to tell you about. I ripped it out of my journal, gave it to him as a gift very early in our relationship. I was just walking downtown and being very frustrated, having realized that I could so easily give a very long, detailed list of what I don't want in romantic partnership. Because every time I dated someone, I'd learn something new that I don't want in romantic partnership. This is, how we get through in the world. And the sudden realization, which any one of you could have told me, but it wouldn't have been as meaningful as it rising up within me. There's a difference between knowing and knowing. So I knew this already. But that day, wham, I knew it. And that was that I was so focused on what I don't want, I kept bringing it into my life. I was scared of naming what I wanted because I didn't think I could have it. And so that day I said, okay, no more BS. What do you want? And I started listing it, and it was really hard because some of them seemed petty, and I wanted to rise above it all. I wanted to be very spiritual about it. But the number one thing that I was unwilling to admit was that I wanted a guy who was bigger than I am. Not necessarily taller or stronger. I just wanted to be able to stand next to a guy and feel feminine. So I wrote that down. The guy I'm with is going to make me feel feminine. I listed a whole bunch of other things that I thought were kind of petty. He will not have small children at home. No. Probably not even teenagers. No. Just want an adult relationship. I'm done. I've raised my kids. So I was very clear about that. And it was like, I don't know, weeks, maybe days before I met David. That's how fast that clearing from willfulness, I must be in partnership. It validates me as a woman and a person, to willingness. What I really want is divine right partnership with someone who values me, who treats me as an equal, knows me as an equal, who challenges me, who holds my feet to the fire, who's passionate and fun and honest, and also bigger than me and has no children. And I got it all and more. David is such a complete package for me. There are things that Spirit knew I needed that I didn't know I needed. I was not much of a feminist. When I met David, he has taught me. He has taught me. I was very sexist, very. Tell you about my 14-year marriage sometime. Very sexist. Stay home, do the dishes, raise the kids, keep the house. I was happy with that. I thought. And Spirit knew better. There's a willfulness that works for us. There's a willfulness that is informed by spiritual practice, that is informed by a willingness to know that something greater than ourselves is out there and available. It's up to us to stay motivated. It's up to us to say yes and say yes again. You know, the universe is impersonal. The universe doesn't care what you ask for. Give it a try. Ask for misery, man. Okay. The universe will not stop you from being miserable. And look around you. We know this is true. So you take on a willingness for the will of God, love, joy, peace, wholeness, abundance, poise, light, life. What am I missing? Omniscience, omnipresence, omnipotence. To assert itself in our lives in a way that's meaningful to what we're called to and who we are. So a couple of you making faces, wait, omnipotence, I know I'm not omnipotent, what are you talking about? That's another sermon. But I got it in my back pocket. I'll give it to you one of these days because it's true. You are omnipotent. You absolutely are. Every last one of us can walk on water if we achieve that level of consciousness. Every once in a while, I'll meet someone who's oh so holy, and behind their back, I'm a little snarky. I'm like, okay, well, let's go out to Lake Wapato. Let's see you walk on water, friend. Let's see where your consciousness really is. I know where my consciousness is. I don't lie to myself about who I am. I don't lie to myself about what I can accomplish in life. I know I can accomplish absolutely anything I say yes to, and I know that I say no a lot. A lot. I'm selective with what I say yes to because I'm a very select person. I'm not meant to do what Karen does. I'm not meant to show up the way Bree does. I'm an individualized manifestation of the one life that is desiring to express through me in a way that only I can. And so it is only through willingness, through spiritual practice, and a willingness to accept that individualized manifestation of how love shows up as me, of how joy shows up as me. It's only through that willingness that I will find my place in the world. I'm not meant to walk on water. I think if we had that consciousness where we could walk on water, we'd all just be in our caves meditating and communicating telepathically as needed. I love the life I'm living. It's not easy. It's not perfect. It is messy. But that's what gives it meaning to me. I've come a long way, and I know each and every one of you can feel that in your hearts. You are not the person you were at 16. You are not the person you were at 8. For some of us, you are not the person you were at 40 or 50. I meet old friends, and I'm like, you don't know me. You don't know me. And it's frustrating when they kind of interact with me in a way, like at my high school reunion. I think I shocked a lot of people. I remember sitting at the planning table. I'm very quiet. That's how I operate. I show up, I see what's needed, I wait for that nudge that says this is yours to do, and then I volunteer. So while everyone was drinking beer and talking loud and laughing, I was just sitting there and nodding and smiling. And I remember Robin, this very vivacious lady, has a very high-powered C-suite type job, and we're talking, we were planning, and we were going to do this, and we were going to do that, and and she goes, Raylene, what would you like to do? She kind of brought her energy down for me because she thought I was quiet. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'd like to do the outreach. It shocked her. I think it totally dismayed her because I don't think she thought that I had what it would take to make that many phone calls, send that many emails. But I did. We had a fantastic reunion. My mom. Oh my gosh, my mom. I read on the internet this morning. I love meme spirituality. I just love it. You are not responsible for what people think of you. You are not responsible for what people think of you. You know what? It is not my problem that my mom has no idea who I am. It is not my problem that my mom sees this unrefined willfulness. You know, she came to service here a couple weeks ago. It blew her mind. I could tell. It's the only time I've seen her speechless. Because she thinks of me as lacking confidence. Would any of you guys say I'm unconfident? Her adjectives for me would blow your mind. Needy, clingy, victim-y. And you know what? Those were true. Those were true when she knew me. Those were true when I lived in her house. Absolutely, 100%. I'm going to own that because I've come so far from it.